You see people when they try to set up a business in a country abroad, they really look for people who understand that specific market because they want to penetrate there quick and sell more. That's exactly the same when you go to companies. All right? Marhaba and how's it going, everyone? And welcome back to Yuwab. I'm your host, Saeed. In Yuwab, we always keep it real, no bullshit involved. And if you're here, it tells me that you really prioritize clarity and growth in life, and also work. And that's why I'm here for you, because I understand your concerns and your frustrations, because I've been there as well. And I will guide you through real conversations from my experience as a CEO and currently as a well-being executive coach. One more thing, if you're new, a special welcome to you and thank you for being here. And thank whoever shared this episode with you. And please share it with someone who desperately would need it. In today's episode, we will talk about corporate cultures, and I love corporate cultures. Why? Because each company is completely different than the other one. Even families, they're different. Even when you go to countries, they're different. You see people when they try to set up a business in a country abroad, they really look for people who understand that specific market because they want to penetrate there quick and sell more. That's exactly the same when you go to companies. All right? All of us in companies want to go up the corporate ladder. I remember when I used to be younger, the first thing I wanted to do was to become a CEO. And I accomplished my dream, which is becoming a CEO, which was recently. The only thing that we need to keep in mind is when you go through a culture or a country or within a family, when you go up, you're gonna go through a lot of things, a lot of transformations, a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. You wanna do that in a way where you don't use your values. And trust me, you're gonna burn yourself out throughout this journey. Most people I know, and I also coach, wanna go up their career ladder. And what I sense is that they go up, but they really miss out on their values. And trust me, I know that because every time I coach someone and during my career, when I manage people, when we have our sit down, that's exactly what I discover. And this is not something that we want to do. We want to go up in a very, as much healthy way as possible. All right? So if you've wandered around in your current workplace right now, how do people move up the career ladder in a way where they don't lose their values? Then this episode is definitely for you. All right? So let's deep dive into what we're going to talk about today. So the problem here is that, and I mentioned that, each company is unique. It has a culture that you don't understand unless you become accustomed and you spend time in that specific business. And I call that the Invisible Playbook. And this is something that people miss out. And let me tell you what happened most of the time. People get really excited about the new role and they get really enthusiastic. And they forget that for each company, they need to go through a specific rule book. Not the policy that everyone brags about, but it's specific invisible stuff that you can read from the dynamics of meetings, speaking to people, etc. All right? And what I also notice is that people link going up the career ladder to hard work, honestly. And what I honestly يقهرني بعض المرات, what really puzzled me is that I see really intelligent people, technically sound. They work so hard. They just have a pile of work and they just work hard and hard and hard. And I pass by, I'm like, why are you doing this? You should focus on working much more smarter. And again, don't get me wrong here. Working hard is important, but it has to be much more smarter. So if you're doing something today, let's say you have a pile of work, question, can I do this better? Can I do it smarter? Don't come and then inherit that work. Because what's really important beside working hard, and this is much more important, is that reading their own dynamics much more player. Trust me, corporates, it's like playing a game. It's all about playing that game. I remember when I used to be in the USA, there was a saying that I will not forget. The saying is, don't hate the players, hate the game. Let me share with you a story from someone whom I've really worked very closely with. And I remember this story because I was starting my career. And there was this guy who I was very much admiring. Okay? The guy was absolutely technically sound. And all of us were saying, this guy will have a bright future. One day, there was an opening for a position up. And there were like two people that we were talking about, oh, this guy will get it, or that guy will get it. And all of us were saying that technical guy who is really knowing everything about that role would get it. And guess what? He did not get that position. He was definitely frustrated because he was working harder, but the other guy was much more smarter. He knew how to play the game. And this is what I talk about when we look at corporate cultures, is all these invisible rules. The good thing is that guy today, the guy who wasn't promoted, he learned a lot from that experience. And now, not now, later, a few years after that, he got promoted into a position and he became much more smarter about his work and what to do about his duties. So this is the problem. We miss out those small things in companies that would basically make us climb the ladder. Now, the second segment of today's episode is understanding the corporate culture is very important if you want to climb that ladder. And what you need, the first thing is clarity. All right? And there are a few things that you keep in mind before we go into the tips that I'll share with you later. The first thing is self-awareness. Who are you really as a person? Just remember your values. Remember who you are. Because what happens is when you go through companies, when you go through a meeting, when you have an interaction with someone, you need to notice how you react. What are your values? Because when you step into the company, what really dictates the way you operate is the culture of that business, the values of those businesses. So it's very important to notice who you are. Start with yourself. I always say it. Once you do that, then the second thing is decode the company's DNA. You need to understand what happens in a business when things are, when good results happen, how behaviors are celebrated, and who actually gets promoted. And look at what really drives innovation, what drives results, what really drives relationships. These are some examples when it comes to that. Now, you understood yourself. You know the company you work in, okay? And this is something that no one will tell you. My advisors have a journal and then write down everything. Make it like a playbook, like a character, like a movie, more or less. This guy does that. When we go into a meeting, this is what happens. This is what people look for when we go into that. Now, very important. When you look at these two things, if they are largely not aligned, if you see that there is a big gap between you and the company, then it will be very difficult for you to survive. And that's the actual reality. Okay? Now, most of the time, that's not the case because you'll see that there is a gap, but there are ways for you to bridge that gap, and we will talk about that. Now, once you do that, then it's very important to make kind of a, let's say you are in this position in a company, find out who are the power players, not just the titles, because sometimes people link getting a business to going to the CEO or getting a promotion going to my manager. Sometimes the titles are not important, but you need to go to people who are influencing, whether it's a decision making or your promotion. Okay? And these are the people that listen to. And always look at office politics. Notice that. Okay? Now, some people, when you take office politics, the first thing that comes into their mind is bad, negative. But that's not the case. Each company is different. And you know what? This is how they are achieving stuff together. That's the behavior that they have. That's the culture that they have. And we need to respect it because it's part of the ecosystem that you are in. So it's very important to notice that. Now, once you do that, then you are going to understand at least your values, the company values, and then you're going to connect the dots between who are the players, what happens in the business, etc. I'll share with you something very important, and this is something that I learned. Most people, when they go into the business, is that for them to get promoted, it's all about a checklist. Seriously. Now, again, I'm not saying following the employee handbook is not important, but sometimes what's really important is doing the checklist, but focusing a lot on understanding the company dynamics. What happens? What am I supposed to do in this situation? Not really textbook guidelines. It's your intuition from understanding the culture, the business, and what happened there. And I remember one time, the first advice that I got is follow the guideline, follow the policy, follow the employee handbook. And knowing myself and knowing the people around me, and when I read the dynamics of the business, I saw that that wasn't the case, honestly. It was all understanding the company dynamics and the politics and what works around that. And this is from all my experience. And most of the people I also coach, they get frustrated. They're like, Saeed, we have followed the procedure, we've done that, we've done this, and we're yet not promoted. What shall we do about it? Yeah, because you're missing out something very important, which is the company culture. And that's what we're gonna talk about in the third segment of today's episode. All right, so the intention from us being in a corporate is to climb with the intention to basically not sell our value and not sell our soul. All right, that's the most important thing, because most of the time you see people going up and forgetting about themselves and how they are interacting with everyone, and they lose their self. And this is something that we don't want. So there are three things that we need to focus on when we do that. The first one is build relationships. All right? Have a great resume, man. Have all the technical skills and let's say expertise you need to basically obtain. But relationships, oh my God, this is the stuff that you need to build on. Now, some people basically look for some relationships to hurt other people, and you don't want that. Your intention should always be like having a great relationship or a good relationships, because you're trying to basically do good things, create value. Don't focus on the nasty ones, because when you go to a company, and trust me, you're there, you understand what I'm saying. You may say, oh, in my company, we have, let's say, backstabbing. Everyone is basically talking behind everyone's back. But that's the case everywhere you go. Not your company. It could be another company. It could be even within families. Even within families, that happens. So, when you look at building relationships, when you focus on the good ones, then when a promotion comes, people would look at these stuff. They will always value that, oh, that person has great relationships with everyone. Not a son of a gun. And this is very important. It will build more trust, visibility, and it's as important or even more important than having a technical skill, in my opinion. And this is what I've seen and when I coach people. The second thing is here, when you look at building relationships, is that find mentors, find allies, look for people whom, when you're not in the room, they will speak on your behalf. And I like that. And I've seen it, when I went throughout the corporate ladder, when I go to a meeting, people would really say, yeah, that guy did a great job, or this guy is the expert when it comes to that. And honestly speaking, trust me, this is going to be your fast track into a promotion without even you being noticing or exerting efforts, because that person will be basically your way to get that promotion. Let me share with you a story. I remember in my last year of practicing engineering, before I went into commercial, I reached a stage where I was very much not happy with where I am, to be honest with you. But I was doing a great job, and I was doing more technical inspections for a specific product that we had. And throughout all these journeys and travels, I got to know a person who, for me, is like a mentor, and I really adore that person. And I remember when I journaled about my personal development plan, I said in 5 years, from a specific date that I had, I'm gonna move from engineering to commercial. That was my plan, and that's why I started my MBA. Actually, because of that guy, I moved to commercial after only 3 years. So I saved 2 years. And if it wasn't for that person, I wouldn't be where I am today, honestly. He basically mentored me, and I worked with him very closely, and I would never forget that favor that he did for me. And we did a great job ultimately with him. So focus on these small things, because sometimes it really helps when it comes to getting a promotion. Or relationships are great. The second thing is deliver great results. And what's really important here is that it has to matter. Now, there are two things when you deliver results, and I always tell people. The first one is work on projects that are important, but they create a much more bigger value. Now, from my commercial background, what I see is that let's say that you have 2 projects, okay? Let's say you have 10 projects and you have 2 people. One guy who focuses on one project that delivers 80% of the revenue, and that other guy focuses on 9 projects which would yield into the 20% of the revenue. Which one of them do you think will be noticed and will get promoted? It's this guy who's working on that one project and delivering 80% of the value. And this is my experience all over, because I was in sales, procurement, marketing. That's exactly the same every time. So the first thing is focus on value. The second thing when you talk about delivering results is that it has to be strategic. What I mean by strategic is that don't focus on creating that impact within your vertical. widen it to a much more bigger audience. Now, when you go up the ladder, you become, let's say, a vice president or a director or something like that. What matters there is that the company's objectives. How are you impacting others? And that's what I mean by objectives, by strategic objectives. Most people, when they go up, they're like, yeah, let me focus on my thing. Oh, I am only operation. Oh, I am only, let's say, commercial. No, it doesn't work this way when you basically want to get promoted or when you want to get noticed. It has to be much more wider. The third thing, when it comes to basically the plan on how to go up the career ladder, is that have a personal brand. And this is something I noticed recently. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Each one of us have a specific uniqueness when it comes to this. And next time, when you are with a group of people, trust me, you're gonna say unintentionally that, oh, we're missing that guy because he's the expert in this specific thing. Or let me call that guy or that person because he is much more strategic or much more analytical. Let's say you are basically having kind of a dilemma with a specific people, and then you would say, you know what, let me call that guy. I know that he is a great team builder. All right? And sometimes you may be like, that guy is a son of a gun, or he is a gossiper. And for me, you don't want to have that personal brand, all right? That's a big no. So having that uniqueness is very important when you shape your personal brand. The second thing is that, and I tell that people, and this is mainly from people who are very technical, is that they do their work and they just like, oh, I've done my work, I don't need to do anything about it. No, show it. Show your work. Most of the people make mistakes because they don't show the work. Brag about it, man. Don't be like, yeah, you know what, no one knows, no one cares. If no one cares this time, next time they're gonna care. So show your work, present it, brag about it, do anything. So this is very important. Now, let me share with you that we talked about 3 things here. We talked about relationships, personal brand, and people knowing you for something. The most important thing, and trust me when I say that, is relationships. If you don't have great relationships, forget about getting promoted. So focus on that. This is much more important. All right, so that is basically your plan to basically get over anything within your corporate culture and then get promoted. Now, few things that I'm gonna leave with you to avoid. Now, bear in mind that when you climb up the ladder, it's not about doing more. It's also about avoiding these traps that I'm gonna share with you, because trust me, I've seen people in my career that went up and honestly it was just a free fall. A lot. And you don't want that. Trust me, when you go up, sometimes, and most of the people fall like that. It's just a free fall. Now, the first thing is office drama. And as much as I think it's fun to hear stories, that guy didn't do this, that guy has been punished, it's just a waste of energy on gossip and honestly, just unnecessarily battles that between you and the other person, maybe, I don't know. And it will never end well, to be honest. So avoid that at all cost. Okay? The second thing is, and I mentioned that in the beginning of the episode, and I've seen this, the more you go up, the more you will have to change. Your environment, even the people who are surrounding you, will be different. The people who you're interacting with, they will be different. I remember when I used to be an engineer versus a CEO. When I go to companies as CEO, they basically send a car to me in the airport, they pick me up. These are all qualities and privileges that you get when you go up the ladder. And what's really important is you still have those human touch. And don't forget who you are at the end of the day. Because time basically, what goes around comes back around. So very important, don't forget to be human. And the third thing here is this yes man syndrome, and I spoke about that. When you say yes to everything, although you may feel that you are a great hard worker, okay, and that's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's not great, but you have to be smart around it. Maybe you delegate. But most people I see is that they do everything by themselves, and then they just burn out eventually, and they become a hard worker than a smarter around how they do things. So this is not really great. Now, the fourth one, and for me this is very important, is that you are definitely gonna get sick. You are gonna be burned out. That's the cost of climbing up the ladder, whether you like it or you don't like it. Very important here is focus on well-being. Focus on investing in your health and relationships, because this is something that you are not gonna regret when you basically in the longer term. So these are 4 things that you should keep in mind when you go up, and try to avoid at all cost. You know, when you go up the career ladder, you don't want it to feel like running on a treadmill. And I know I love running, because when you run on a treadmill or when you run outside, it feels as if you reach a point where you're just thinking about a lot of things that comes into your mind, and you're forgetting that you're running. What happens is you just run and not improve your pace. And what's really important here is that you run smarter. You want to increase your pace. And that's exactly the same when you go to companies. You go to a company, you start, and then your target should be, how can I go up the corporate ladder? How can I grow? And this is what people should focus about. Now, let me leave you with one last story. This is someone that I know very well. Great guy. He had one problem. He's been saying yes to everything. He was brought for something, I remember. Unfortunately, he ended up with 10 things. Guess what happened to him? He got burned out. And that guy who we all said, wow, he's gonna save our life, he's gonna solve our problems and all these good stuff, became a person who was very much hated by everyone, very much not achieving what he should do, and eventually, honestly, his time was not that great. Why? Because he's been saying yes for everything and not reading the dynamics of the current business where he is. And every time I was speaking to that person, he's like, I've done it, and that's how it's done in previous companies, and that's how it should be done here. But again, reality is, no, each company is different. All right? And the most important thing is to be recognized where you are, for you to go that career ladder, to go up that career ladder. Right? So just to recap, when you look at how to basically go up the corporate ladder, focus on these specific things. The first thing is learn the unspoken rules, the invisible stuff that happens in the business. The second thing is build real relationships. Relationships are very important. deliver results which are having a value and creating a much more wider impact. The fourth one is focus on and develop your personal brand. And the last one is the pitfalls, which is avoiding drama, overcommitment, and also burnout. All right? Before we close, I want to thank you for sticking around. Yuwab isn't just a podcast, it's a space intentionally created for you to grow. Together, we're going to empower ourselves with tools, stories, and mindset shifts that you need to unlock your full potential. And trust me, that's what we should do in life. Our mission is not just to grow locally, but also globally and reach more minds like yours and spread impacts as much as we can. And honestly, we can't just do this alone. What I ask is by sharing this episode or just subscribe, we can help spread Yuwab to more people who can benefit from the message of this episode. Because trust me, Yuwab is all about transformation and real impacts. All right? So until next time, take care of yourself and those who you care about. مع السلامة.